Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 83 of the Playoff Push podcast. As always, I'm your host, Jack Dobbins, and today I'm joined by a very special guest, the first ever five-time guest on the Playoff Push podcast before anyone else has even been on twice. Cayden Stewart is back. How we doing?
Jack, I am feeling fantabulous today. How about you?
Back to the signature I see with Fantabulous, getting ready to talk some NFL draft, recording this the day before the draft, 1 day and 8 minutes away from its start.
Good time to get started. I like this. I was like forward to the first round. Even the second and third rounds that Friday night always seem interesting to me, but the draft night's one of my more underrated sports days on the calendar.
I love it. It's one of my favorite days, absolutely. I'm covering it for Com Radio tomorrow, but we got to get the show out there the day of. So now we're hitting on our little first round picks. We spent a lot of time doing our mock drafts, making the most intricate trades the world's ever seen, which we'll get to. Do you want to lead off with quickly mentioning the Dexter Lawrence trade?
Yeah, certainly. That certainly moves the Giants into a better position than what they were before. They get the 10th pick from Cincinnati in that deal. I find it funny that Cincinnati only had to make that deal because they let Trey Hendrickson go because they didn't want to pay him, and then trade the 10th pick to Dexter Lawrence, who they will have to pay, and have to pay to the point that he left the Giants because they wouldn't pay him, which I find extremely ironic. But they have two top 10 picks. That's the important thing for our mock draft, and I'm curious to see how they handle this. I think they go one offensive, one defensive. We'll get to that in a minute.
I just wanted to hear you say it again because, obviously I'm a Giants fan. I wanted to hear you say we have two top 10 picks because I think it's funny.
This is fair, and yet Howie Rosen will still find a way to have a better draft.
He will, but hey, we'll get there in a second. Let's lead off. Do we even need to talk about who the first overall pick is? I think we can both just chalk up Fernando Mendoza and let it be.
I'm ready for the LinkedIn post. I'm ready for Friday morning and to see. I have been selected by the Las Vegas Raiders first overall because Fernando Mendoza is just the all-around perfect dude, great player. At that national championship game, if I had any doubts about him, those sealed them. And for the record, I did not. This is an incredible player. He's going to go number one easy.
I'm honored for this opportunity. If you don't follow Fernando Mendoza on LinkedIn, go do it now. It is like genuinely hilarious because he's the best quarterback in the nation and he's posting like he's a random guy pursuing business. Please go follow him if you haven't. It's a great follow.
Yeah, it's certainly worth it.
So we can chalk up Fernando Mendoza at one. I think that's more than reasonable. But at number two, some questions arise. It's obviously likely to be an edge rusher. The question is, who do you go versus who do I go? I'm going Arvell Reese from Ohio State. Now, a lot of people have the other side of this coin. But I think Reese is such a talented player, standing at 6'4", 243. So not the biggest, edge rusher you've ever seen, but he can also drop into coverage sometimes. He's kind of a versatile linebacker. 6.5 sacks this past season for the dominant Ohio State Buckeyes. I think it's really a 50-50 between him and Bailey. However, I'm going to give it to Reese at two.
I think it's truly 50-50 here. I could see the Jets going either direction. The one thing that solidifies the pick for me, and I also agree with Arvell Reese for the record, is the fact that the Jets canceled their pre-draft interview with David Bailey. Now, why would you do that if
Hmm.
you're planning on drafting him? And this being said, this is the Jets, so who knows? Honestly, like genuinely, who knows what they're going to do with this pick? But I think Arvell Reese is the best player at the position that they have the most need for. They'll get him, and with the canceling of the meeting with David Bailey, that just seems to be the big, major red flag. Unless it's a smoke screen to end all smoke screens, but the Jets aren't that complicated. And I will
I
say,
think,
with Arvell, what was it?
no, you keep going.
I say with Arvell Reese, like you said, 6.5 sacks last year, and he'd be joining a team that was ranked 27th in pressure rate, just 28.8% last season. So, like you said, they definitely need an edge rusher, and this is going to help them a lot.
Yeah, I think it's almost inevitable. It will be an edge rusher, correct?
Yeah.
I'm very excited to see who they end up going. But number three is a spot where I've seen so many different options. However, I believe the Arizona Cardinals will be selecting running back Jeremiah Love from Notre Dame. What do you think on that?
I love Jeremiah Love going high, but I think he comes next at pick four. I think this is where David Bailey goes for Arizona. The
Hmm.
Cardinals have a lot of needs. They lose Michael Carter this offseason, and even though he seems to be their backup guy, James Conner is getting there in age. The injuries are now starting to pile up, so Carter being there was at least a decent fallback option, but now they're really weak at running back, so I could see them taking Love. It wouldn't be the most shocking thing in the world, but just like the Jets, they were bottom five in the league in pressure rate. The Jets were 28.8%, they were 28.5%. And I think Reese, with those sacks and that overall great history at Ohio State, That's going to be a good pick for the Jets. And then David Bailey coming to Texas Tech is going to be even more productive. And Bailey last year led the league in sacks, or tied for lead in sacks at 14 and a half in the FBS. That is going to be a massive addition to the Cardinals defense, who already comes in with Josh Sweat.
I'm unaware if you saw who it was, but one of the hosts that's going to be working the NFL draft was running through her like warm up rounds before tomorrow. And she actually pretended like one of the stage crew members was Jeremiah Love and was talking to him like he was drafted by Arizona. He's talking about the offense and all that. So I'm just saying, I don't think they have the script, but I'm just saying that's a good sign for him going at 3.
I have seen that exact clip. I saw it a few hours ago, maybe when it's around the same time you saw it, but I don't know. I'm not buying it. It might be a little bit of bait.
We could see. We could see. But I've seen him going a lot from 4 to 3 in the last few days. I feel confident enough to put him at 3 with Arizona kind of loosening up on their grip that they had on an edge rusher so early in this draft cycle. But 4 is where I'm going Bailey, so we're switching our picks between 3 and 4. What do you think about the Love versus Bailey in this spot?
I think both are going to help the Titans out a lot. That's not even a question. Both positions are one of need at edge rusher and running back. The running back pick, my only concern with my prediction here is the fact that the Titans brought in Michael Carter from the Cardinals, ironically, but also still have Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears. Those are two very, very qualified running backs for this backfield. But I just see the Titans tied to Jeremiah Love all offseason. They've been constantly mentioned in these conversations. I think he's one of the best pure talents in the draft. And there's still plenty of depth at edge rusher going into the later picks, which we can talk about as the draft goes on here and this episode goes on. But there's not much left at running back. Like Jeremiah Love is probably the only running back that could even sniff the top first round. So if the Titans are going for a running back, they think they need an improvement. This is where they go with Jeremiah Love. And Love again is just a pure insane talent. He's definitely worthy of a top five pick.
Yeah, I love Kaytron Allen, but it's Love's draft. I agree with you on the fact that no other running back should be going in the first round. I mean, 1,372 yards, good for eighth in the nation. 18 touchdowns, tied for third. 6.9 yards per carry, good for 10th. But that's because he wasn't even getting handed the ball in a lot of times where they would just bench him to make sure he doesn't get hurt. This dude's a baller, and I think he's an inevitable top 5 pick. I've seen a few people put him at 7. I do not see this dude falling past even 4 in any situation.
Yeah, 100% agree. Love is an incredible player, and he's going to be there without much of a doubt. I will say, if the Cardinals or Jets happen to pass on Reese or Bailey, that is who the Titans will pick. I certainly like that edge rusher play for them, but I think running back's probably number one concern, at least with Jeremiah Love there. And if Love is not there, then they go Reese or Bailey, whatever one's left.
Absolutely. Now we head to the first pick of the New York Giants, my squad. I do not remember who you have here, but I have us taking Downs at the 5 over Sonny Styles. I've been kind of 50-50 on that pick, but I'm trending towards Downs solely because of what I've been seeing in the whole wave of the mock draft area. What do you feel about the Styles versus Downs debate at 5?
I'm certainly picking Downs here as well. I like that analysis by you. I think the Giants now having two picks in the top 10 is almost a bit of a hedge. They can go with the best available player, and that it would certainly be Downs if those first four picks go in the way I believe they will. And Downs is easily the best defensive back in the class, somewhere where you guys need a lot of help. And I say you guys obviously mean the Giants, but diehard Giants fan I'm talking to, so I got to make sure I mince my words somewhat well. But Downs is just an incredible player. And he, again, just like Jeremiah Love, deserving a top five pick. And now he goes to a team that has a major need, at least on defense in the secondary. The defensive front seven is very good, but if the Giants can lock down that secondary, they can afford to have a little bit lackluster offense. And I will say that offense will be improved with my next pick for the Giants.
Yeah, Downs is truly such a smart player, incredible tackler, and I just feel like he'll fit in Harbaugh's scheme so well. He's one of the most talented players I think I've ever seen in the secondary. To be fair, I've only been doing mock drafts for like 6 years, but he's so incredible at his job. The kind of medical mistakes I've seen with the meniscus, I'm kind of ever so slightly concerned about, but I don't think it's anywhere close to enough to say that Downs is not a good pick at 5.
Yeah, I would say easily at least a decent pick. Even some of those once Caleb Downs there, even from a Giants fan perspective, shouldn't be mad at that pick. There's certainly a reasonable explanation for it.
Absolutely. Heading over to number 6, I said I was debating between Downs and Styles at 5. However, I actually had the Dallas Cowboys trading up with the Cleveland Browns up to 6 to take Sonny Styles for their linebacker core. What are you feeling about pick number 6?
This is another one that I think could certainly go in the direction that you're saying, and I also agree with the Cowboys moving up. Styles, again, one of the better players. The Cowboys need help on the edge, and this would probably be one of the top players that they could have possibly picked there, and certainly one of the more commonly picked trades across all first round scenarios. The only thing I'm concerned about is if they include pick 20 in this package, which for the moment I don't believe they will. I don't have that penciled in. I like just have a fun, simple mock draft to a point. But if the Cowboys were to have to package that 20th pick, I'd be a little bit less confident in picking them to actually pull off this trade with Cleveland. But I think the Cowboys need some help on their defensive front. That's more than known. And Sonny Styles, one of the better players in this draft, goes to them.
I agree. Giving up 20 would be brutal for Dallas. My exact trade package, and I wrote it out. Cleveland trades pick number 6 and pick number 146 this year to Dallas in exchange for Dallas's pick number 12, pick number 92, their 2027 third, and their 2027 sixth. I think two-thirds and a first to move up 6 spots is more than reasonable.
Yeah, I don't think that'd be crazy overpaid by any means. And to put that Cowboys defense into perspective with exact numbers, they allowed 6.1 yards per play last season, second worst in the league, and 30.1 points per game, which was by far the worst in football. The defense is their main priority. They have to go after a linebacker here.
Never forget the Giants Cowboys shootout in what I believe to be week 2 from last year, where we thought Russell Wilson was a competent quarterback.
Yeah.
That's how it shows sometimes. But Sonny Styles, I think, is one of the most talented players in this entire draft. And I would have loved for the Giants to get him, but unfortunately, he is not falling to 10 for their second round pick. So, do you want to head over to 7 next?
Let's say go to 7.
All right, my 7th pick for the Washington Commanders will be Carnell Tate. We have back to back to back Ohio Staters getting taken in the 5, 6, and 7 slots. Haha, funny. Carnell Tate, very, very good receiver. Washington needs to bolster the receiver core. With Jaden Daniels coming back, assumably fully healthy, he could really use that McLaurin and Tate duo to beat through the NFC East secondaries.
Uh, Jack, that joke was older than the issues with Tate's 40 times this year. Like, and no one still cares about either one of those things. I gotta say that. I've heard too much 6-7 jokes recently. I'm pissed off now. Anyway, I do agree with Carnell Tate. Unfortunately, I have to agree with you there. Tate, one of the better, probably the best wide receiver in this class, if not one of the better ones. That's a unanimous statement. The Commanders certainly in need of a receiver help here. McLaurin's getting a little bit up in age, and you can see again the injuries starting to pile up, just like we said earlier with some of those guys like Tony Pollard's and the James Connors at the running back position. But McLaurin, no, not shying away from falling victim to that receiver position as well for Washington, and now losing Debo Samuel, not bringing in a replacement just yet. I'm sure they're planning on bringing in one in this draft. Even though there's a lot of depth at wide receiver, I have 6 total receivers going in this first round. So I don't think they wait for a second round to draft a top tier receiver. And Carnell Tate is right there for the taking. I think they go with Tate, and that's going to bring about a lot of help to their offense.
I only have 5 receivers going this round, so I assume you have Boston somewhere in the back end.
I do.
So that's probably what does it. But I think Tate's such a good receiver threat. You always see Ohio State putting out the best receiver products year after year after year. Tate will just be another example of that.
Yeah, and Tate averaged 17.2 yards per catch last season. That is going to be an incredible addition to this team that already has a strong deep threat in Terry McLaurin, who also went to Ohio State for the record. So Washington doubling down the Ohio State town here.
Like, is that even human? That's almost a fifth of the field per catch.
Yeah, that's just incredible.
Literally unreal. But heading into the 8, 9 spots with the Saints and the Chiefs, I have back to back Miami players going. At 8, leading off with Ruben Bain Jr. to the New Orleans Saints, the edge rusher. Who do you have at 8?
This is one of my more interesting ones, and I'm not sure a lot of people will agree with this. I have Jordan Tyson, the wide receiver out of Arizona
Wow.
State, going to the Saints here at number 8. And that's not necessarily because he's an insane talent, because even though I do believe that he is, I don't think that's the primary reason. I think it's because the loss of Rashid Shaheed is extremely underrated in the Saints team. And we keep seeing over and over again guys like Chris Olave getting injured for them. They don't really have much of a fallback plan if Olave goes down. And that's exactly what happened to them last year, and they were completely screwed over. Although I do think I like Tyler Shuck here. He could be either just pure backup plan being a good quarterback, but if they truly like Tyler Shuck as much as I do, and I believe that is the case, they need to build around him. So offensive line wouldn't be crazy for me to say either. I think Francis Mauigoa coming up next. I have him going to the Chiefs next, but that wouldn't be a shocking pick for me to the Saints either. But Tyson is certainly a need for them. At least the wide receiver position is certainly a need, and he has been incredibly fast, incredibly agile. He's going to be a good ad.
Yeah, I just think the Saints have a super weak edge rush right now, and Ruben Bain's such a great player. 9.5 sacks this past season for the Miami Hurricanes, miracle Cinderella defense who made it to the championship game. But he's 6'3", 275, so a very strong build, and I think he easily deserves a top 10 pick.
Yeah, certainly. And he certainly alleviated his hamstring concerns with his pro days, according to multiple GMs I've seen reports from. It seems like they have kind of gotten rid of that hamstring concern, even with the few months they had leading up to the season. I'm sure that wouldn't be a major concern anyway. But if that draft stock took any type of a hit and put him outside the top 10, that concern being alleviated moves it certainly back into the top 10 without a question.
And it seems like we have the same next pick heading to Kansas City, Francis Mauigoa, the tackle from Miami.
Yeah, the first player to go and play on either line, for that matter, offensive or defensive, with the first offensive lineman off the board, number nine. Maui Noah, again, obviously the best player at his position in this draft. I think the Chiefs need a lot of help, especially with Patrick Mahomes now being out for at least the first half of the season, roughly first half of the season. But they're going to need a lot of help in protecting that quarterback. And now Mahomes coming in injured, being a little bit rusty, they're going to need even more help and getting some more time. So as much as I think that they could possibly reach, and I wouldn't say reach, it's just a few picks ahead of where I have them. It wouldn't really be a reach in my mind, but Kenyon Sadiq is not out of the question for the Chiefs, I would say. I trust Noah Gray as a solid tight end, but he's not a number one workhorse guy. And Kelsey's definitely gone sooner rather than later. I think that people seeing that 3 year deal kind of throws them off because they see 3 years, they think he's going to stay. But I think that's more salary cap hit issue. They might pay him after he's retired. I don't think he plays after this year. I think this is the last year we see Travis Kelsey. He's been slower. So I wouldn't be shocked if Sadiq comes in, but Maui Noah is certainly the more impotent need and more direct need that the Chiefs need.
This could be a crazy thing. I don't have Sadiq going in the first round. So there's a potential for the Chiefs to trade up and get him early second.
I did not realize when I was looking over your mock, I did not realize you had that. That is probably your hottest take, or either of our hottest takes, because I have Sadiq as easily the most dynamic tight end. That's not even a question in this draft, but I don't think it's crazy to say that he'd be up there in the top three most dynamic overall receivers here with Tate and Tyson. I've been on Sadiq for a long time.
I think this is the worst tight end class we've had in such a long time. Do I think he's a talented player? Sure. Would I take him over some other positions of need, considering how loaded this draft is at edge, at tackle, at receiver, at any of those other spots? Would I rather take him? I don't think so.
That is an extremely interesting take, but we can get to that when I have what is one of my highlighted picks, so we can get to
And
that.
trust me, I'm one of the biggest fans of the tight end position in the entire world. I only throw to the tight end in Madden. You know that firsthand. And yet I still don't think he's going in the first. So that just shows you how confident I am in this pick.
I mean, we've seen there's always one that falls. I have that being Ruben Bain, but again, we'll get to that later. But there's always one that falls to at least later in the first round than we expect, or possibly into the second or the fifth round if you're Shedeur Sanders.
Just back to Mauanoa real quick before we move on. He was the only player I have in my first round draft that I actually wrote a full draft profile for
Hmm.
Penn State's student radio station, Com Radio. I'm just going to go over my strengths and weaknesses for him real quick. In terms of his strengths, I wrote he is a very broad frame and great muscle mass at 6'5.5", 329 pounds at offensive tackle. He's very good at positioning himself on double teams, which is always good for a tackle, especially with how good the edge rushers are in the modern day NFL. Very strong bull rush stopper, which again is always helpful, especially in a division like the AFC West, which has so many good edge rushers. Also, patient hands during pass slides, which obviously Mahomes is a pass first quarterback. If he can slide in more versatile pass protection, that's what you love to see from a tackle. Weaknesses. I notice he sometimes struggles getting good angles in outside zone. And a lot of times that's a problem, but the Chiefs don't really run the ball with their halfbacks all that often compared to other squads. So not too much of a worry for them specifically. He could fall off block if his feet are behind his pad. So he needs to make sure he stays with his feet behind him where he can drive forward, or else he's very easy to get taken advantage of there. And he needs to maneuver his body better. There's not enough bending of his body when he's pushing, which I feel like will come with time. But with a 6'5.5", 329 build, it's tricky. It's just something that takes time there.
I mean, that's very well said. I obviously haven't done the research on him that you having done your full report on the draft pick, but I certainly like him as overall just good talent. So I think I was settled to agree on that one.
Sounds good. Over to 10 for the Giants' second pick. You had him going at 8. I have him going at 10. The New York Giants will take Jordan Tyson out of Arizona State with their second first round pick, but I know that's not who you have here. Who do you have?
I think they definitely go receiver, and this is the one thing that might throw my mock draft off a little bit, is I have the teams I'm very confident in going with receiver, but if Tyson is to fall a little bit, or if now Micaiah Lemon, who I have going at number 10 of the Giants, is to fall a little bit, that'll obviously shuffle one of the receivers back. So we'll see who each team goes with personnel wise, but I think if Tate and Tyson are gone, the best available receiver is Micaiah Lemon. I've heard some concerns they might not be the best locker room presence in the world, but to be honest with you, I don't think it's that crazy. It's not like a Spencer Rattler type story a few years ago where he fell a few rounds because of that. I think Mekhi Lemon's overall a very solid player. He's definitely the third best wide receiver in this class, specifically. As I said before, that I think Sadiq might be the third best overall receiver, but Lemon up there with talent wise, and I think the Giants need to go offense here, losing Wan'Dale Robinson. They need someone that could really be a true workhorse receptions wise, and Lemon fits the build.
The thing I love about Tyson, I think he's such a versatile wideout. I think he can play slot. I think he can play outside. He can be the X. He can be the Y. He can be any spot. I think he's just able to play the role of receiver so much better than a ton of other guys. Super quickness. His cuts are amazing. Smooth routes. Great tree. The only issue with him is his drops. But it was the same problem with Wan'Dale Robinson. So I don't think it's that much of a difference. Obviously, coached by Hines Ward at Arizona State. That's also very helpful. Great at catching contested. I love this kid, man. He's so good.
He is coached by, as you said, Hines Ward. That's certainly a big factor as well. And then mentioning Wanda Robinson again, problem with drops, then had 100 catches in back-to-back seasons, if I'm not mistaken. So certainly not a major issue.
Definitely around it. Another issue is injuries. However, it's the New York Giants. They get injured every second. So it's nothing new for the franchise.
This is very true.
That concludes our top 10. Anyone else you want to highlight in the first round specifically? I'll let you go first.
There's a few sporadic names I want to highlight. Ironically, the next one is pick number 11. That's Mansour Delane, the cornerback out of LSU. This is going to be a major need for the Dolphins, who had opponents complete 72% of their passes against them last season, which is the worst since the 2018 Buccaneers, who have allowed 72.5%. So this
Wow.
is a historically bad secondary for Miami. They need a lot of help everywhere, but Delane is an incredible talent again from LSU at corner. Probably the best LSU player in this draft by a long shot. And I'd say Delane comes into this Miami team, and you can't really revamp the entire defensive front, but certainly is someone that teams have to look at.
I have Delane at 11 as well, so I'm very happy you brought that up. I think that's a great choice of a pick. Such a good corner. I think he's pretty comfortably the number one corner in the class. 11 passes defended, 2 interceptions this past season, along with 28 tackles. Good build, 6 foot 190. Obviously plays for LSU, so he's a damn good ball player. Had 4 interceptions the year prior. Miami needs to work on the secondary. He's who's going to do it.
Yeah, I certainly agree. Probably the best defensive back in this class.
I totally agree with you.
So up next, I'll say number 15, the Buccaneers. I wasn't initially on this pick, but I was talked into this by one of my friends here at Quinnipiac. Shout out Matt Flaherty. If you happen to be watching this for some reason, I'm not quite sure you'll be able to get access to the link, but if you happen to see this podcast episode, shout out to you for the heads up. But Kenyon Sadiq goes number 15 to the Buccaneers. And I
Mm.
say this because Mike Evans is now gone. Trey Palmer has looked a little bit inconsistent. Jalen McMillan fell off after his first year, so that's a little bit of a weak spot for me at the wide receiver position. And then Chris Godwin, it seems like they're trying to edge him out the door. It's been the last 2 years where we keep seeing, oh, is he going to head out? Is the injuries going to keep piling up? I don't think they necessarily want him gone, but he's not a clear number one guy who they all know and love over there. And my one problem again with Otten is a lot of drops last year, not as reliable as a tight end I'm sure they want. And now Kenyon Sadiq comes in. He's almost just a bigger wide receiver. He's extremely dynamic as a receiver, extremely dynamic as a pass catcher. I think he comes in and possibly runs. They could possibly run a two tight end set there in Tampa, and your receiving core looks like Otten, Sadiq, Godwin, Igbuka, and McMillan. That's a very strong core in my mind.
Again, I'm not too high on Sadiq. I think that Otten's more than good enough for Tampa Bay when they decide to use him properly. This is going to be interesting for you, but I have the Philadelphia Eagles trading up with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers moving Tampa back to 23. And with that, the Philadelphia Eagles will select Monroe Freeling because we all know Howie Roseman loves his Georgia guys. And with the concerns around Lane Johnson's future in Philly, I think what's better than taking a tackle from your GM's favorite college at 15? He won't fall that far. Trade up for Tampa, who does not have a clear pick at 15 in my mind.
I agree with the Eagles trading up, and I certainly have recognized those Georgia Bulldogs coming to the Eagles unit. But another thing that's been underrated in recent years is the Alabama Crimson Tide that have been coming to the Eagles unit. And that is who I have us trading up for to pick number 17, where Cayden Proctor heads to Philadelphia. And for the record, I have Monroe Freeling going to Cleveland at number 12, following their trade back with Dallas. I think they also need some help on the offensive line, but that's a topic for another day. I well, this is our only episode, but the phrase still stands. But Cayden Proctor this year, last year, I should say, for Alabama, has been again an absolutely incredible talent. I think Lane Johnson's almost on his way out now. The contract expiring in the next couple of years. And another thing that people don't talk about too much is Landon Dickerson. After this year, the retirement rumors really got loud for a few weeks there. I didn't think he would retire this early, but the Eagles did restructure his contract so that it ends 1 year earlier than it had before. So I think that's certainly something that should not be overlooked. The offensive tackle position could be extremely weak, extremely fast for this Eagles team. And much as I love Lane Johnson, they need to find a replacement sooner rather than later. And Cayden Proctor fits the bill here.
Funny enough, I also have Proctor going at 17, except with the Lions, who you have trading the pick to Philly. So I just thought that was funny.
Spencer Fano from Utah, I have him at number 21. I think he's a first round talent for sure. I'm not quite sure he breaks in the top 15 for me. And I think Freeling and Proctor have him beat on a few different metrics, but Fano is certainly someone that you could look at, and certainly someone I won't disagree with either.
Yeah, that's fine to me. 13, you already mentioned him, I believe, but I have Makai Lemon going to the Rams because I think when you see these locker room rumors about how he's like, crazy, I've seen a ton of those. If you watched his combine interviews, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I think there's no better place to go for a coach to knock him into shape than Sean McVay in Los Angeles. I think he's such a great coach at being able to hone the talent out of people while leaving the egos behind. And I feel like him in Los Angeles is a perfect spot.
I don't think that's crazy at all to say. I like the Rams taking a wide receiver. I had them trading back with the Jets here, which is an
Hmm.
interesting play. I had the Jets trading up for Jermad McCoy for their secondary, the cornerback out of Tennessee, which I was talking to my Jets fan roommate. Shout out to Jack Byer. He probably listened to that episode at some point, but he was not happy with the move. But I think the Jets fans should be a little bit happy here. McCoy is a standout talent at Tennessee. It's probably the second best defensive back behind Delane, who I mentioned before, going number 11 to Miami. Hence why I have McCoy being the one to go to the Jets. I've seen Delane go to them a few times that they trade up, but I don't think they trade up far enough to get him. And I will say with the Rams highlighting that receiver thing, I have Omar Cooper going to Los Angeles Rams as my fourth receiver off the board and the fourth of the top 16 picks, which I'm also hesitant to have finalized, but I think this receiver class is just so stacked. There's so many first round talents. Omar Cooper, someone who has incredible ball vision, incredible route running. He's able to get his feet inbounds easily, as you saw against Penn State personally. This guy is just,
Shut up.
you gotta,
I was talking to my dad earlier while I was doing my mock draft, and I told him I think there's probably 7 or 8 guys in this draft class that can get 1,000 yard seasons as receivers. And he was like, "What? I don't think so."
I don't think that's a crazy statement. I could certainly see that. I'm going to have two more picks I want to highlight here in the back five picks of the first round. Another receiver off the board as well. That's KC Conception to Houston. I know you love him just as much as I do. This dude is an absolute dog. And if your post interview emails to all of the GMs in the league didn't seal that for you, then you clearly didn't read it well enough. Because this guy has all the confidence in the world needed to be a wide receiver one. The confidence level and the overall skill kind of mimics an Amon-Ra St. Brown to me. He's a guy that came in as a later round pick, but came in with that same level of confidence, kind of the same build. And I love Amon-Ra, surefire top five receiver in the league right now. I don't think Inception will reach that full ceiling, but I think he's more than capable to go to that already stacked Houston wide receiver core and continue to develop there along with the other guys.
Yeah, I don't think he reaches the ceiling of the guy I'm about to say either, but actually, I know firsthand his confidence reminds me of Malik Neighbors. And I think just the way that he holds himself, the way that he knows he's one of the best and he's willing to do anything it takes to get there. I have him going 24 to the Cleveland Browns, where everybody goes to die. However, if there's anyone that can take advantage of the opportunity, It's him.
This is true. Conception certainly comes in with the best attitude for that spot. And while we're at it, the last receiver I have off the board is the aforementioned Denzel Boston that you shouted out earlier. I have him going number 30 to Miami, the wide receiver out of Washington. I think that could also be a guy that goes in the mid-second round. I would not be shocked to see this be one of my likely many wrong picks in the first rounds. It's extremely hard to do a full mock draft with all the GMs and picking the wrong guys and all that stuff, as I'm sure we both know the last few years doing these mock drafts. But Boston at first round talent, I think he could sneak in here.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
couldn't agree more. I don't have him in the first round, but I think he's definitely a talent. He's easily, a top 3 to 4 pick of the second round in my mind. So having him in the first round in the back end is not crazy at all.
And it's a Dolphins team that I don't believe Tyreek Hill is returning to, and they already traded away Jalen Waddle, so they need a lot of help at receiver.
They do, absolutely. I want to mention one more guy in the early part of the first round, Vega Ioane. I go to Penn State. I have to mention him. Easily the best interior offensive lineman in this draft class. I've been going 14 to the Baltimore Ravens. I don't have anything to say about him. I just wanted to give him a shout out. One of the hardest workers in this entire draft. He's going to prove to everyone why he deserves to be a top half pick in the first round. Dog, the only Penn Stater in the first round.
Yeah, Vega Ioane, another incredibly decent talent, very but one of the top offensive blockers in this draft. And obviously, you've seen him in person, so you know a lot more about what he can do than I have. But and what I've seen, he has been an incredibly valid guy. And that's the 14th pick to Baltimore, at least in my draft. That would be very, very well read.
I do want to talk about one more guy before we close out the first round, before you talk about your amazing pick in the second round, who should be a first rounder. Let's quickly
Hmm.
talk about our trade up, going from 34 to 32 in both of our drafts. The Arizona Cardinals jump the New York Jets to draft Ty Simpson as their next quarterback.
I love this play. I think losing Kyler Murray is going to hurt the Cardinals more than they think. Jacoby Brissett is a guy who's kind of like a Jameis Winston caliber, where he's going to throw for a lot of yards, but you're not quite sure who's going to be recording those yards, whether it's the receivers or the defensive backs running the other direction to the end zone. So I'm not quite sure that having him as a starter for a full season is going to be quite substantial. Although he does have that veteran leadership possibility. So Ty Simpson coming in, he's going to learn from a decent quarterback. That should help him out a lot. The only concern I have with this is trading with a division rival, but this has not been uncommon. These two teams have dealt in the past. This is going to be a move that they certainly move up for.
Especially since it's only a 2 pick move. It's not that frowned upon to just move up a couple slots, especially to screw over the Jets.
This is true. And if the Eagles and Cowboys can do it to screw over the Giants, they can screw over the Jets and Steelers by doing this. And while I mentioned the Steelers, I keep seeing people say that the Steelers might be the one to make this move. And while in essence that isn't a bad call, the Steelers just think Aaron Rodgers is infallible for whatever reason. They let him drag them on all season last year, and we're lucky enough to make the playoffs, and it's going to happen again this year. I'm not quite sure about the playoff part, but Aaron Rodgers is going to be the GM of the Steelers this offseason yet again.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not the biggest Ty Simpson fan, but I think he will go first round just because somebody's going to take him. Either the Jets take him first pick of the second, or either the Steelers or Cardinals make a move to get into the pick to get him right before. But I think he will inevitably be in those last few picks in the first or the first pick of the second. I don't think he'll go beyond that.
This is all very true. I agree fully.
Do you want to mention your second round highlight very quick before we close out?
I need to mention my second round highlight very quick because I am extremely annoyed. I am angered even at Mel Kiper and all of these people who do not have Jacob Rodriguez as a first round pick. I I get the size. The size isn't the big thing. He's only 6'1", 235 as a linebacker. And I get the missed tackles. But he led the league in tackles. He had 4 picks. He had 7 forced fumbles. It clearly doesn't freaking matter. He is a stud. He's probably one of the best linebackers I have seen in college. I started watching college football a few years ago, and this guy is the first linebacker I ever saw. It just physically made me say, "Wow." He is incredible. The only other time I felt this level about a linebacker like this was Nakobe Dean, national champion for the Georgia Bulldogs, and now a Super Bowl champion in the NFL. This guy is going to be an incredible stud. Whoever gets him, which I truly, truly hope is Harry Roseman and the Eagles in round number 2, if he does fall that far, is going to be getting an incredible steal at the linebacker position.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I projected Nakobe Dean to be a first rounder when he was coming out of school. I still don't know why teams passed him all the way to what was it, the fifth round? It's like, what are you doing?
I believe it was a late third. I was on the way home from our formal actually at
Oh,
home.
no way.
Yeah, I was mad. I was yelling to my dad. I'm like, I can't believe the Eagles passed on to Kobe Dean in the first round. Then they passed on him a second time while we were at the formal. And this goes to show what I was like in high school, where I was focused more on the NFL draft than getting a formal date. But I was there, I showed up. But anyway, I was that mad about it. And then I'm in the car and they finally take me in the third round. And my dad was like, see, that's why they passed on him. Just to
Yeah,
annoy me. But
I don't blame you.
they got him and he got a ring, so I can't be mad.
Yeah, huge N'Kobe Dean fan. He reminds me a lot of N'Kobe, actually. I was on the Jacob Rodriguez for Heisman train. Unfortunately, did not go well, but I thought he deserved it. So him not being a projected first rounder to me is genuinely ridiculous. I couldn't put him in my draft just because if so many mock drafters do not see him as a first round. I would rather my mock draft be closer to correct than fit what I want it to be. But I think he's totally a first round talent, and teams are going to regret missing out on him.
He will be the steal of the draft. Mark it down right now. He will be the steal of the draft.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's easily a Pro Bowl, potentially even all pro caliber talent. If he can get those missed tackles under control, he's going to be one of the best linebackers in all the NFL. Any final words before we close out?
That's pretty much it. I will try not to be super loud when I'm watching this draft because I tend to always have a vocal reaction when the Eagles come up to pick after watching the Jalen Reagor fiasco that was the 2020 NFL draft. But then they followed up with Jalen Hurts the next night. So again, can't be extremely mad about that. But just my reaction to my advice to fans watching who may be a little bit newer to football, if a team does something that doesn't seem right in the moment, as much as you might think you're right, and it's I need to take my own advice here, just don't freak out or else your parents will yell at you.
I will actually be on air during the draft from 8 to 9 and then again from 10 to 11 on Com Radio for Penn State. Just look up Penn State Com Radio and click the link, and you can listen in Eastern Time for the first round of the draft on Thursday, April 23rd. But that's going to do it here from episode 83 of the Playoff Push podcast. For the rest of our first round picks, look at my Instagram, Playoff Push Podcast. I will collaborate Cayden on the post as well, so you guys can see our full first rounders, because obviously we couldn't go over everybody in this episode, but make sure to check it out. We hope you enjoyed the analysis. Thank you for tuning in. From Jack Dobbins and Cayden Stewart, have a great rest of your day.